control oil and you control nations. Control food and you control people. Those are frightening but true words from Henry Kissinger, the great statesman and Nobel Peace Prize winner that served 2 American presidents. Suffice it to say, he knows a thing or two about geopolitics and what makes nations and nations' people tick. He knew both from personal experience as an immigrant from Nazi Germany and from his study what fascism, communism, and dictatorships could do to control people. And by his reckoning, it's food. Just days ago, we heard more tragic news about what has historically been a food crisis in North Korea. The latest report says that the food crisis has deteriorated to the point where they are now cutting rations to their soldiers, for the first time in 20 plus years. Now, this pans out because earlier this month, on February 6th, North Korea's state news agency, KCNA, reported that the Workers' Party of Korea had called a meeting of the party's Central Committee for the very important and urgent task to establish the correct strategy for the development of agriculture. And last month, the U.S.-based monitoring group 38 North said North Korea's food availability has likely fallen below the bare minimum with regard to human needs. No doubt, people will starve. People will die. And while Supreme Leader Kim Jong-un and his cabinet, quote, established the correct strategy for the development of agriculture, he can sit back with his bib on, generously doling out scraps off his table while keeping his people in line. Well, Eric, that's North Korea, you say. We are the land of milk and honey here in the U.S. Just go to your local grocery store and you'll see aisles upon aisles of food and drink. And if the regular chicken isn't what you want, you don't have to settle. You can buy the organic, non-GMO, no antibiotics ever, free-range, vegetarian-fed, boneless, skinless, individually wrapped chicken version. Our food supply is secure, you say. Or is it? Let me share with you a few facts about our food supply. First, farmland. Food comes from farmland. And the fact is that there is less farmland than ever before. This chart shows from 2000 onward, the total area of land in the U.S. for farms has decreased annually, predictably, aside from a very small increase in 2012. In fact, the total farmland area has decreased by almost 50 million acres. 50 million acres. And guess what? Less land means less food. And then you have the likes of Bill Gates and China buying up American farmland. Our buddy Bill owns 242,000 acres, and China owns a little more than 384,000 acres. Most of it sitting right around our military bases. Go figure. Now, there's going to be less and less land for the average family farmer. So what happens when you have less acreage for farming, but more demand for food than you did before? Well, the answer is you need to get more food from the land you have. And you do that with fertilizer. Fertilizer. It's like a magic potion that you sprinkle on crops to make them grow faster, stronger, fuller. And we need that to give us the crop yields required to sustain our national and global appetites. Unfortunately, fertilizer prices have more than doubled since 2021. And this is due to many factors, including Russian price hikes, a limited supply of fertilizer minerals, high energy costs, and high global demand. And did you know that the United States is a major importer and dependent on foreign fertilizer? In fact, the U.S. is the second or third top importer for each of the three major components of fertilizer: nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. And the top producers of these are all foreign nations. They include your favorites: China, Russia, Belarus, our friends up north in Canada, a little bit from Morocco, all of these foreign. So what happens when they decide not to sell it to us, or when they decide to nationalize it and keep it for themselves? Well, you end up with a situation like we have now. Global fertilizer prices, while down from their peaks in 2022, will remain historically elevated in 2023. And that's going to bloat farm production costs. In the U.S., fertilizer and other input expenses are projected to account for 49% of total operating costs for farmers in 2023. And that's on par with 2022 and well above the average by about 40%. So what does that mean? Well, at best, we pay through the nose for the fertilizer. That's passed on to us, the consumer. And at worst, we don't get the fertilizer and our crop yields suffer. We lack supply. We lack availability at the grocery store. And in the end, we go without. And probably the most concerning to most of us, and certainly me, is water. Water is something that if we don't have it, we don't exist. And it's no secret we have a water shortage situation in the West. Even with this year's heavenly, and I say heavenly, much needed precipitation out west, the experts say we still have drought conditions this year. Dry rivers, low reservoirs, and ration supply to quench the thirst of the area. And one of the biggest users of that water, you guessed it, agriculture. 40% in total to raise our food, between irrigation at 37% and livestock and aquaculture at 3%. Only thermoelectricity consumes more at 41%, just 1% more of our total withdrawals. So what does that mean? It means less acreage is planted, which means less food is available. And less herds and flocks are raised, which means less food is available. In fact, data in the USDA's January 31st, 2023 cattle report indicated tight U.S. beef and dairy for the next few years. The beef cow herd is only at 29 million head. That sounds like a lot, but it's the lowest since 1962. Dairy cow herds are the lowest since 2015. The reason, over 50% of cow and cattle herds are in drought areas, and that drove record high culling of about 14%. And this is something, folks, we're going to feel for years because of the time involved in the cow-calf cycle. You just don't start and stop. That's what it takes to rebuild herds. It takes a lot of time. So let me translate that. If we have less food with the same appetite, it either means you are paying more for it, assuming it's available, and assuming you can afford it, or you get in line like the rest of your comrades and obediently wait for your ration from the government. We know that there is food, even in starving countries like North Korea, but where it goes is to the elite and to those in power. I don't see Kim Jong-un going hungry. Now the question is, how much of this is the work of nature and how much of this is the work of big government? Honestly, I don't know. But I can say this. No one in D.C. is crying because we have less farmland. Some are actually even happy. The fewer farms, the fewer ranches, the smaller their environmental impact, and the more bugs and artificial meat they can feed us. No one in D.C. cares about the price of fertilizer. That's because just 7.4% of the total food dollar is due to the farmer growing it. So what does the price of fertilizer really matter to Mateo or Brittany shopping at their friendly Dean DeLuca on 18th Street Northwest? It doesn't. But it matters to Farmer John because his cost just went up. And maybe next year, he'll just call it quits. Well, I guess that's life. Sorry. And finally, no one in D.C. cares about the drought in California. I'm sorry. There's plenty of water back east coming out of my tap. And besides, don't we get our produce from Mexico anyway these days? So I guess what I'm saying, folks, what I'm saying is while the government may not be behind this imminent food crisis, they certainly don't care enough to do much about it. Just like other social programs, D.C. would rather you come begging to them for help for handouts, and for dependence that enslaves you to their rule and keeps you trapped on the government dole forever. Because if you need them, if you depend on them, if they are the hand that feeds you, they will control you. Kim Jong-un knows it, and they know it too. So what do you think? Am I paranoid? Share your comments, and if you have something you see or hear and you want me to look at, I'll do my best. Put that down there too. Until next time, be ready, be strong, be alert, and keep on prepping.